Hello everyone and welcome to lecture number 8 in Google Cloud Platform series. In the last lecture, we discussed about Cloud VPC and subnets. In this video, we'll discuss more on the firewall, and we'll also have a kind of hands-on demo wherein we'll allow and deny some traffic as such. So let's get started. So initially, we'll talk more on the firewall rules, what it is exactly. So as you know, firewall acts like a kind of gatekeeper, which will basically allow or block the incoming and the outgoing traffic out of the network as such. And it is basically a kind of security product as such you can consider. And firewall rule basically allows you to control the traffic going in or out of the network, as we discussed. So going further, each firewall rule has a priority of 0 to 65,535 assigned to it. And the priority can be in between these numbers only as such. And if you consider lower the number, like 0 has the higher priority and higher the number has the lower priority. So this is a thumb rule. Please keep in mind, lower the number which is having the highest priority and higher the number has the lower priority. And we also discussed about default VPC, which is created by Google as such, right? That usually creates 4 firewall rule with the priority of 65,534. And what I mean by this is, let me try to show you in the Google Cloud Console. So if I go to my GCP console, just put my password. I'll go to VPC network. Let me select the project. Okay. And this is the default VPC which I was talking about. And if you see, we have 4 firewall rules being mentioned. Let's look at those firewall rules. So if I go to the firewalls, so these are the 4 default firewall rules which GCP creates for you. And if you want to know more about it, so the first one is default allow internal. Basically, it will allow the incoming traffic from the VM instances in the same VPC network. So keep in mind, this is for if those VM instances are part of the same VPC network, then it will allow the incoming traffic from the VM instances as such by default. And the second one is default allow SSH. This will allow the incoming TCP traffic on port 22. Basically, you do SSH to your Linux machines, right? This is for that. Default allow RDP, which will allow the incoming traffic on port number 3389. This is basically for the Windows machines, RDP. And the last one is default allow ICMP. This is basically for the ping functionality. So let's see these rules in the portal again. So the first one is, or maybe this one was the first one in my presentation. So default allow internal, this is the ingress firewall rule and priority of 65,534. And these are the ports and protocol, which we can see, and the action is allow and few other fields. You can even check last hits, how many hits being there for this rule. And another one is default allow SSH, which we discussed as such. SSHing the Linux machine, for example, there is again a priority of 65,534. This is for ICMP, again the same priority, and this is for the RDP. So if you want to override these rules, right, you can create the similar rule with a lower priority than this, because if you remember, lower the number, higher the priority. So you can even create a rule for maybe deny SSH with priority 65,533 or maybe priority of 1,000. So lower the number, higher the priority. Just keep that in mind. So I think we have discussed all those points from this slide. And before we go to the next slide and talk about ingress and egress rule, right, let me try to demonstrate this with an example so that things will be quite easier. if I go to my paint, and what we're gonna do in this hands-on demo is we're gonna create a kind of VPC. So let's take an example like this is your VPC, for example, like this. So this is your VPC network, and the IP which we can assign it 10.0.0.0/28. And what the /28 means is we'll have around 32 minus 28 equals to 4, and then 2 to the power 4, which is 16. So we will be having around 16 IPs as such. And how many which we can use from this, if you want to know more about it, just go to cidr.xyz. This is a very good website. Enter the IP address, which was in our case 10.0.0.0/28. So if you see, around total IP address is 16, over which this is the first usable IP, which is 10.0.0.1, and the last usable IP is 10.0.0.14. And the two IP address are 10.0.0. This is the CIDR base IP, and this is the broadcast IP. So usually we don't use these two, and this is the first usable and the last usable. We can use the IP range between these two IP addresses as such. And if you want to know more about the networking, this was already being discussed in my previous videos, so please refer that. And let's go to the paint. So this was the VPC network, and then we'll create two subnets. This may be subnet A, and this may be subnet B. So let's give a name, subnet A, maybe in US Central. This will be subnet B. In Asia, in Singapore, maybe, for example. And then we will have virtual machines inside these subnets. So this will be my VMA, for example. This will be my another virtual machine, VMB, for example. So this is VMA. And this is VMB. So these VMs will basically get an IP address from these subnets. And then we will have our firewall, which will be controlling the incoming and outgoing traffic as such. And let's consider this is like incoming, which is also called as ingress. And this is like outgoing traffic, which is also called as egress. So let's write it over here. This will be incoming / ingress. And this will be outgoing / egress. It's one and the similar, and this is our firewall. Cool. So we will be having a kind of default internet gateway, which we can put it over here, which will talk to internet. And this will be our default internet gateway. So let's name this as internet gateway. And then this default internet gateway will be talking to the outside world or to the internet like this. So let's denote internet, public internet by this. This is our public internet. And this is public internet, maybe, yeah. and this is my machine as such, or my laptop. Yeah. So I'll just draw my laptop over here. I'll just take my laptop IP address. If you want to find what is my IP address, just go over here. So this is my laptop's public IP. I'll just put over here my laptop. Okay. So now let's say suppose I want my laptop to access this VM, and we can allow and deny this using the firewall rules, which is the ingress rule. Yeah, in our case. And if my VM wants to talk to the outside world or to the internet, or maybe want to install a patch, and then we can even also configure a kind of outgoing or egress rules as such. So let's see a demo wherein what we'll be doing, we'll be creating a VM A and VM B, and then we'll try to ping this VM. Let's see if we are able to do that. So let's try to replicate this scenario. Let's go to GCP console. Let me go to Compute Engine. We'll be creating 2 VM instances with public IPs. So this is instance 1. Let's create this in maybe US Central as per our diagram. So US Central, any zone is fine, not an issue. Let's take this machine. If we go down, our machine is N2 standard with 2 virtual CPU and 8 GB of memory. If we go down, if you want to change the boot disk, you can even select CentOS, Fedora, whatever you want. I'm just keeping it by default, which is Debian. Keeping it the by default service account. Go to advanced. I'll just take my own network. So I just noticed that I haven't created a VPC network as such. So we'll first create that. So if we go over here, VPC network, and we'll create a new VPC network. We'll just give a name VPC demo custom. This is a custom VPC which we are creating. So let's create a custom subnet as such. Let's create a subnet in US Central and a subnet in Singapore. So this is like subnet in US. Let's select the region US Central. US Central. Let's give the IP range. So for example, which is 10.0.0.0/28. For example, for the time being, I'm just keeping this by default. So let's click on done. So subnet in US is created. Let's create another subnet, which is subnet in Asia, which is Singapore. Let's give a name subnet-Asia. Asia Southeast 1. Let's give a IP which is 10.0.1.0/28 again. Let's click on done. So we do have a subnet in US and subnet in Asia. So as I mentioned initially, Google creates 4 default rules for you. If you want to select that, you can select it. But for this demo, we are interested in a custom VPC. So we'll create our own firewall rules. We'll not make use of these rules as such. So I'll just click on create. So this may take some time. So you see, this is the default VPC which was created by Google for you, and now our custom VPC is getting created. Default VPC has 4 firewall rules. In our VPC, we are not using the default rules, so it should be 0 as such. So until and unless it is getting created, let's try to create the instance maybe, but we need this VPC. So let's wait for a moment. So our custom VPC is created, 2 subnets, and we haven't created any firewall rules yet. So let's try to maybe refresh this and create a compute instance. Let's keep the same. Let's create it in US Central 1. Let's take this machine configuration, which is 2 VCP 8 GB of memory. Let's keep all the things default. Let's go down, advanced option, networking. I just want to select my own network over here, which I have created, which is the VPC demo custom. Yeah. And it has automatically taken the US subnet as we have selected the US region. So GCP is quite intelligent over there. If you do some mistake in selecting the region and the subnet is not there, then you'll not be able to see that. Let's keep the IP address ephemeral. That's fine. Let's create. And we wanted to create another instance. Let's create instance 2, and we need to create that in Asia or Singapore. So let's go over here. Let's take Asia Southeast 1. I'm just searching for it. Asia Southeast 1, Singapore. Okay, zone is anything is fine. Let's take again this configuration. Let's go to network, advanced options, networking, and let's select the VPC which we have created. We don't want to use the default VPC. Let's select the VPC, and it has again picked up the subnet Asia which we have created previously. Yeah. Let's click on create. So now a VPC is created, a custom VPC with 2 subnets and no firewall rules. And now we are creating 2 instances. So let me just add network tags is there. Okay, that's good. Network is also there, which is like our VPC custom network which we have created. Okay, so 2 instances are now in place. And as you could see, we don't have any firewall rules being created as such. Let's try to access the public IP of VM number 1 and see what happens. So let me go to CMD. Let me hit ping and put the IP address. And let me also copy the IP, external IP of second VM. So we see we are getting request timed out as such because we haven't allowed the firewall which says allow the ICMP or ping. Yeah, that's the reason, and it should be the same for the second instance. And now let's say suppose we want to solve this problem, we want to allow the ping to our VM instances as such. What you can do, you can see the network is assigned, this network is assigned, which is a VPC demo custom. Let's go to our VPC demo custom and let's create a firewall rule which says allow ping to my network or to these machines as such. Add a rule which says allow ICMP ping. As you could see, firewall rule controls incoming or outgoing traffic to an instance. Yeah, by default, incoming traffic from outside your network is blocked. So just keep that in mind. So this is our same custom VPC. That's fine. Priority is 1000. It should be okay. Direction of traffic. Ingress applies to incoming traffic, which we discussed. Egress applies to outbound traffic. So we want to have a kind of ingress rule which needs to be allowed for the timing. Currently, that is denied because we don't have any firewall rules in place. And we want to, let's take, for example, all instances in the network, IPv4 ranges. Source ranges is, source will be internet. So it's 0.0.0.0/0. You can even allow the ping only from your machine. If you need to do that, you just need to put this, your laptop IP, whatever IP your laptop have, public IP. So what we want to allow specified ports and protocol. If you want to allow all, which is not a best practice, you can see, you need to select that. But if you only want to allow only want to allow ICMP or ping in this case, you can select specified ports and protocol. And you can click on other and simply mention ICMP. This will allow the ping. If you want to allow TCP traffic, you can select this and mention the port number. UDP is this. Let me create this firewall. And now you can see once this firewall rule is created, our ping should work. So it says successfully created. Now you see we are able to ping the instances. Let me check the another one. So we have successfully allowed the ICMP traffic, which is the ping. Now let's say suppose you want to allow SSH. Currently, if you could see, you'll not be able to do SSH to this machine. Yeah. If I click on SSH, let's see what error comes up. It may take some time, guys. So just be with me. It is taking some time, so just be with me, guys. Currently, no firewall rule exists which allows the SSH. And if we go back to the presentation, SSH is allow incoming TCP on port number 22. Until this is giving us an error. So let's try to see this second slide, which is pending. So ingress rule, which we discussed, is an incoming traffic coming from the outside world to the GCP targets. Yeah. And target for ingress rule defines the destination. And destination is our virtual machines, for example, in this case. And source defines where the traffic is coming from. So guys, just remember these two terms are for the ingress rule, for example, currently. Because incoming traffic coming from outside world, this is the source which defined the traffic is coming from. And it will be hitting the GCP targets like virtual machines. So this is the target which defines the destination. And similarly for egress rule, egress is the outbound rule, which is outgoing traffic to destination from GCP targets. So over here, target is the source as such. So source would be your virtual machines. Yeah. Because from your virtual machines, you'll be initiating the outbound traffic. Destination can be anything, internet, or if you want to take a patch or any CIDR range or IP address as such. And these are the components of firewall which we have seen: direction, ingress, egress, priority, which we can define, action on match, either it's allow or deny, and targets, ports, and protocol. In the example, we have made use of ICMP as such. So let me go back and see whether we are getting the error. So you see, we are getting the error which says connection could not be done, and the error says VM has a firewall rule. Please ensure that VM has a firewall rule that allows TCP traffic from the IP range to the port number this. So let's try to create a firewall rule which allows SSH. So if I just refresh it and go to my firewalls in my VPC network like this, maybe let me show you from the start. I'll go to firewall. So maybe we can create a new rule for that, for example, or even let me just go back. Yeah. We can say add a firewall rule which says allow -SSH, and if you go down, our VPC network is there, which is like allow ingress. SSH is because we'll be doing it from the outside world, yeah, which says allow, and the targets would be all instances in the network, for example, and source filter is our internet 0.0.0.0/0. Yeah, and we need to allow TCP and port number is 22. So let's create a firewall rule and see whether the SSH is working after creating a firewall rule or not. So it says creating, still it is creating. It has created successfully. Let's go to VM instance and try to do the SSH. It is transferring the SSH keys to the VM. I'll just click on authorize. It is establishing the connection to SSH server. Yeah, you could see we are logged in. So in this way, you can make use of those firewall rules to allow or deny traffic, which is like incoming or outgoing traffic. Incoming traffic is coming from the outside world to your network, and outgoing traffic is going out from your machine. So just try to understand this. Ingress rule means target is the destination and source is the traffic is coming from. For egress rule, target is the source, like from your VM machine, it should be going out, and destination should be the IP address. So thank you so much for watching. It is big video, but I hope this was informative.